Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Christoph Niemann, and I'm an illustrator. And for an illustrator working rather traditionally, of course, it's a somewhat natural thing to start thinking about children's apps. As I found out, though, it's a little bit harder than it may seem at the beginning. The first thing you want to do with any project, you want to do research. So I happen to have kids who love video games, so I was like, kids, you're in luck. Daddy's going to play video games with you. And we were playing for like 10 minutes, and the big problem is that they just find out that I'm not very good at video games. In fact, I stink so much at video games that I realized like the traditional thing you have on the screen is just far too fast moving. The whole thing with like dying and sounds and points and lives, it's just like it's far too hard for me. So I realized traditional video game is not going to be my thing. And for me, the big change was really when I had my first iPad or my first iPhone. There was something about the interactivity of touching a screen and seeing something happen. It was so much more direct than using a mouse. And technically it's the same thing. It's just like you have a signal, it turns some pixels to go into another color, but it felt real. And what I liked about that so much was that I had always this dream when you draw with a marker that this drawing comes alive. And of course you can never do that because, like, at least when I grew up, it was just like far too hard and difficult to make animation, but also like animations that then would somehow react to what you do. And now could I not only technically do that, but I could also kind of draw it myself. And I knew, or let's put it this way, I knew it was technically possible. So I'm super lucky. I know a lot of people at Google, at Condé Nast, and I talked to all these people and said, this is what I want to do: frame-based animation, interactive. And they all said, this is not possible. And I was like, this can't be. I was like, oh, animation, you can have a PNG go from the left to the right or from the right to the left. And I said, no, but I want to move. They said, oh yeah, you can use a 3D engine. I was like, I don't want a 3D engine, I want a drawing. And I want a drawing like a classic cartoon frame-based animation. And they're like, no. And so the only way I could solve this was by teaching myself how to code. And coding is incredibly hard. And it looks difficult here, it's actually even more difficult. Because when you do a drawing, and the drawing is not good, you have kind of like a 90% or 80% good drawings. It's okay, but just like this bumps. With coding, if you kind of get one semicolon wrong, you have a black screen. And so there's no 99% great, it's just like it works or it doesn't. And so I found in my case like 60 to 70% of the time was just finding the semicolon or like the parentheses that were in the wrong place. An incredibly frustrating process. And I think I spent like a day, a week for at least a year on that. And then it was like a random Saturday morning. I had my first app. It was like for the first time I turned on my phone. It was web-based and I uploaded the code and it worked. And I was just so excited. I ran down to my wife, woke her up and was like, my first app is here, it's working, and I showed it to her. And she was like, really? Are you? But actually then it was a breakthrough, it just didn't really show, and so like another 2 or 3 months later I turned the red and green button into this thing here. And so it was really about kind of programming the swipe direction and then interacting with the animation. In this case, actually even the fact that the finger is on top of the illustration hides the transition. So you basically, it's just like 4 animations that are playing, and the finger always hides the moment when it switches direction. So it feels actually surprisingly fluid. And this idea then turned into Petting Zoo. Doing a real app, of course, is so much more difficult. And I was lucky. I went back to my developer friends and said, like, see, this is what I want to do. I need to kind of give a different class to a div. And they're like, oh, divs and classes. Yes, no, that's no problem. You can do this much more intelligent. So I found that the big breakthrough was not learning to code, but speaking the language so you can talk to the engineers. Because it means like every illustrator knows you have to be able to talk to printers. Otherwise you cannot do a book. And I just had to know the language and the basic system of how code works in order to communicate with them. And then I had this fantastic coder at the Times I've been working with. And so he ended up doing a fantastic job building the thing. Then I was lucky enough to work with Fox and Sheep, who just like have the kind of the background and really like bring this thing to the world. And so ultimately it is not a solitary exercise, but really a collaboration to a large scale. now with, like going forward, I wanted to do another app, and I wanted to do something really interactive. The problem with interaction for me as an author and a storyteller is I want to have complete control. I think, how can I surprise you if you have a say in the outcome? Because the whole idea of a joke, the whole idea of drama, is that something unexpected happens. Or as Kurt Vonnegut said about literature, like you write literature, you create a character that people care about, and then you do something terrible to them. Of course, nobody wants something terrible to be done to their thing, so if they're interactive, of course they're going to protect their hero. And so how can I do something where I let the user do something and have fun, but on the other hand, still drive the story forward? And this was another, unfortunately, couple of years until I figured that part out. For me, the solution was this app called Chomp. So the idea was, the drawing remains mine. The ideas remain mine. And your job as a user is basically put your selfie in there live and talk and sing and make funny faces. And so all you need to do is like you just use the phone of your camera. Now you have the actions happening here. And then there's only one interaction. You can just press. And when you press the button, something happens. And when you're done with that, you can choose from, you can swipe through or choose any from these scenes here. And it starts fairly simple, like this monkey here. And it does things, and the more often you click, more things happen. And then you can go on and record that. You can actually create almost like little postcards, because you can then record your little movies. Or like, for example, you can tell your mom that you passed the test, and isn't that exciting? And then what I wanted to do, and this is really the part where the drawing comes in. I wanted to have something that's surprising. So something I often don't like about apps is that they're scalable, so they're predictable. So like after the first 2 or 3 chapters, we figure it out. And I wanted to have something that sometimes is animated, like this conductor. Oh, and we need sound for this one. So this is really a classic animation. There's some more music stuff going on. But then I also wanted to bring like a little bit of storytelling in there. For example, there we have this dinosaur. So there's a little science. It's about education, so you learn how to eat dinosaurs and things. And so there's a lot of different ones and a lot of different angles. I always... So this is, of course, for all the parents of young kids, this is a good one. And so from a drawing perspective, I try to really go into different directions for each one. There's a whole section on love, so you can send love letters. She loves me. Love me not. And what I found is that, again, this is something that I find a little difficult about a lot of apps out there, is that they're being run by engineers. So everything is very 3D and a lot of highlights. And I like that there's something so powerful about drawing, and just like the simplicity of a drawing. I think that this same animation in 3D would just be too realistic and too gross. This whole idea of being on your cell phone the entire day, I think is told a little bit more exciting like this. When you spend a lot of time with a kid's book that your kids really love, and you don't like that book, it's torture. So I always try to find, like, first of all, do something that is exciting for the kids, but also, like, even after you do it for 5 times, maybe still has something for a parent also to find interesting. And what I mentioned with the Pixar movies, I often find that with Pixar there's 2 separate tracks. You have the kids movie that's running perfectly fine, it's a very straight story, but there's almost like a subtext where like you have parents or like grown-up metaphors that run on a separate level. And I did this here in this in the book section, so the kids can just look at this. It's like the magic of reading. And then all of a sudden, you have Alice in Wonderland and Shakespeare, all about high culture here. Don Quixote, Kafka, Moby Dick, Will and Tell, Robinson Crusoe, Jane Austen, Proust, and Ulysses. So with that, thank you very much.
We have time for just a couple of questions.
As an animator, which kind of technical barriers that you found out when you were developing this? I mean, I'm an animator too, and I'm working on an app with a lot of animation, and there are a lot of problems also there. So, what tool do you use to make these animations and convey it into an app and run it like as we saw now? So
I use Flash because Flash has the huge advantage of being vector, so you have tiny file sizes. I think Chomp we now have at 33 megabytes for a grant. I think it's essentially like 6 or 7 or maybe even 10 minutes of running animation. So it's tiny, but it's super crisp. So there's no loss of quality. It's very easy and intuitive to draw. It has like this kind of animation has only one gigantic disadvantage. And it's just, you draw every frame separately, so it's something like 8,000 frames, and it just takes a lot of time, and every time I try to cheat and tween in between, it just doesn't look right. And for me, the soul of this kind of drawing is that there's no rule, it's not math, you cannot teach an algorithm how to do that.
yes.
But on the other hand, I think that's what makes this kind of drawing special.
For me, the quality, this is one of those quality things. You put this kind of quality in the tablet vehicle can put it right at a child's fingertips, and that's what you've done here. So it's great.
Hey there, I'm a big fan of yours. Is this free?
It's actually right now this week. It's free app of the week. So Intel.
That's right.
Yeah.
And normally, how much do you check for?
Normally, I think it's $2.99.
There goes the bandwidth. Do not start everybody down. Do not. Okay?
It's going to be free for another 2 minutes.
Do not do that. I see what you're doing. Wait a little till after this is over.
Thursday, so.
Anyone else?
Hi, also big fan. Are you working on new project right now?
For not apps, I'm working on 2 editorial projects that involve more like a virtual reality, augmented reality angle. The one is somewhat finished, the other one I'm in the middle of. Can't quite say what it is, but it's going to be out in the next month or so. So I'm doing a lot. I try to actually really balance between very traditional drawing work, which I still enjoy, and actually go more and more into classic ink drawing again, and very digital coding, code-based work for screens. I think both of these angles are so valid, and just because one is exciting doesn't make the other one less exciting.
Oh, it's really great that you came, and I'm glad that your flight worked out, that we could hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.